30 years ago, South Africans handed the ANC the keys to the most promising country on the African continent. We had gold, diamonds, platinum. We were the strongest economy south of the Sahara, world's infrastructure, and we had hope. Buckets and buckets of hope. Today, the ANC has fed all of that to the dogs. And by dogs, I mean the ravages pack of corruption, incompetence, greed, and moral decay that has devoured everything good about this country, while the party leadership stood by and watched, or worse, held the door open and showed them where the good stuff was kept. Now, why am I here? I want to tell you how they served up our future. Because you see, the ANC didn't just allow corruption, they catered it. They laid out South Africa like a buffet table and invited every connected crook, every briefcase company owner, and every tender fraudster to come and eat their fill. And boy oh boy did they feast. They fed our electricity system to the dogs at Eskom. What was once a world-class power utility became a carcass packed clean by vultures in expensive suits. The dogs didn't just eat the profits, they ate the infrastructure, the expertise, the maintenance budgets, and the future capacity. Now we sit in the dark while they count their billions. They fed our healthcare system to the dogs. Hospitals that once worked became death traps. Medicine meant for patients ended up in private warehouses. Equipment meant for saving lives ended up being misplaced into personal connections and collections. The dogs didn't just eat the budget, they ate hope, dignity, and lives. The ANC opened up the education system like it was feeding time at the zoo. They threw our children's future to the dogs of incompetence and corruption. Textbook scandals, infrastructure collapse, teacher deployment disasters. They actually managed to turn education into an all-you-can-steal buffet. The dogs ate the school nutrition programs and the feeding schemes, leaving the kids hungry. The other dogs ate the budgets, leaving schools falling apart. They even ate the teacher training programs, leaving classrooms with people who couldn't teach a fish to swim. They even ate the textbooks. Literally, in some provinces, books meant for learning became expensive toilet paper for officials' relatives, and some textbooks actually looked like they were chewed on. So what did we get instead? A generation of kids who cannot read properly, can't do basic mathematics, and can't compete globally because the ANC fed their education to the dogs of political deployment and tender fraud. Plus, I heard most of our grade 4s can't even read a full sentence in a book. So, we also had roads that worked, railways that ran, ports that functioned, airports that impressed visitors, and then they said, you know what, the dogs look hungry. Let's feed them all of this. Yeah, get all of it. Our road network became a feeding ground for construction cartels and connected contractors. Potholes became permanent features because fixing them properly wasn't as profitable as fixing them badly. You know what I mean? Repeatedly and with inflated contracts of connected companies. The railway system that was fed entirely to the dogs. Prasa became a skeleton picked clean by corrupt officials and criminal syndicates. Trains that once carried millions of workers became scrap metal in the hands of cable thieves and component strippers. The dogs didn't just eat the profits, they ate the actual trains, the tracks, the stations, and the dreams of millions who depended on affordable transport. At the local level, the ANC created an elaborate feeding program for the dogs of corruption and not the kids at school. Every municipality became a dog bowl, filled daily with ratepayers' money, your money, service delivery budgets, and infrastructure grants. Water systems were fed to dogs of incompetence. Sewage treatment plants became dog toys for officials to play with until they broke. Then electricity distribution became the dog food for the connected suppliers and maintenance contractors who somehow specialized in maintaining nothing while getting paid for absolutely everything. Some of these guys earn 150,000 a month for what? The dogs ate the refuse collection systems, leaving communities swimming in garbage. They ate the housing budgets, leaving people in shacks while officials built mansions. They ate the community development funds, leaving townships without parks, factories closing, libraries, or recreational facilities. The ANC has fed our entire economy to the dogs of corruption and incompetence. What was once Africa's economic powerhouse became a picked over carcass that even the hungriest scavengers struggle to find meat on. They fed our currency to the dogs of instability and mismanagement. The rand became so weak that even other African currencies started looking down on it. International investors fled faster than tourists leaving a game reserve when the lions escape. Unemployment was thrown to the dogs of bad policy and worse implementation. Youth unemployment became so high that job creation became a cruel joke told by officials who've never actually created a job that wasn't funded by taxpayers and whose kids are guaranteed to have jobs because they're connected. State-owned enterprises were served like a 7-course meal to the dogs of state capture. South African Airways, Transnet, you name it, each carefully prepared and served to the connected individuals and companies who ate them down to the bone. The ANC even fed our safety to the dogs. Police stations became feeding grounds for corrupt officials who said protection to the highest bidder. The criminal justice system became a revolving door where criminals came for snacks and stayed for full meals. Women and children were thrown to the dogs of violence and lawlessness, while police resources were diverted to protecting politicians who caused the problems in the first place. Communities were left to fend for themselves against criminal pacts, while law enforcement officials fed at the everything of corruption, really. The most disgusting part isn't just that the ANC fed South Africa to the dogs. It's that they joined the feeding frenzy. Party leaders stopped pretending to be shepherds protecting the flock and revealed themselves as the hungriest dogs at the table. They normalized corruption so thoroughly that stealing became a career path. They made incompetence acceptable. As long as you have the right political connections, they turned public service into self-service and convinced people that this was normal. Now, after 30 years of feeding time, what's left? I'll tell you, a country stripped bare, institutions hollowed out, systems that don't work, home affairs, and citizens who have learned to survive on scraps while the dogs of corruption grow fat on what used to be our shared prosperity. The ANC keeps promising to clean up this mess. But tell me, how do you clean up when you're the ones who opened the gate and called the dogs in the first place? How do you restore order when you've spent decades teaching people that chaos is profitable, especially with parties like the EFF? The beautiful irony is that the ANC has fed so much to the dogs that there's barely anything left to steal. The parasites have almost killed the host. The dogs have eaten so much that they've made themselves sick, and the country they were feeding off is barely breathing. Elections have consequences, and the 2024 results showed that even the most loyal voters eventually notice when their leaders care about feeding dogs than feeding the people. The ANC spent 30 years, 31 approximately, building a banquet table for corruption and calling it governance. They created a feeding frenzy and called it transformation. They watched the country get devoured and called it liberation. But here's one thing about dogs, that is. When you stop feeding them, they turn on you. And the ANC is about to discover that the very corruption they nurtured and fed is now too big and too hungry for them to feed, and just way too vicious for them to control. They fed South Africa to the dogs. Now it's time to see what happens when the dogs are still hungry and there's nothing left to eat. This is the Dawn Summer Sambit. Let's get to 1,000 subscribers on this channel. Watch my latest episode from the other side, and like always, you finish it for me.